says I'm alive. So for now, I'm alive. Namo tassa bhagavato arhato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arhato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arhato samma sambuddhassa. Bhutam dhammam sangham namasami. So, is there a way I can put something in the chat?
Yeah, you should be able to click on here.
Oh,
No, on this, yeah. Just leave it on all. Just click right here, this little box.
this box.
Yes,
Oh, that
right.
box.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put the number, the reference of the sutta in the chat. Okay. So I can understand this keyboard. That's right. See it. So when you see empty cloud and you see SN 3595, it's in the connected discourses of the Buddha. Maybe I should even put the name of it. And this is the sutta is Tumlankya Putta. And this fellow has appeared, this venerable one has appeared. I'm calling him a fellow because he's kind of a character. And he's appeared in two places in the middle-length discourses, which we're not going to look at today. And he's kind of appears to be a little bit foolish in these suttas. He's the first one. He's the lesser discourse. He's to Molankya Putta. He's demanding the answer to some questions that the Lord Buddha says that he does not declare, such as whether after the death of a Tathagata he's eternal or not eternal, existing or not existing, or the same the world, whether the world is eternal or not eternal, and so on. So these questions that the other ascetics would kind of ponder and argue about. And actually, Ton Wade asked about this particular sutta. And there is a simile of somebody shot by an arrow, and before the surgeon can remove the arrow, he demands to know what kind of arrow, who made the arrow, and what kind of material the arrow was made out of. So the guy is going to die in the process of trying to answer these questions. So the Lord Buddha says, well, what do I declare? It's the Four Noble Truths, suffering, the cause of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path leading to the end of suffering. So that's that one sutta. And the other one is about the five lower fetters. But you can look these up and get more detail about our venerable Molankya Putta. So, and then in the Anguttara Nikaya, he also appears, and by that time he's an old monk, an old bhikkhu, and he gets the same kind of reprimand exactly as he gets in this sutta. So, and then and the Lord Buddha discusses, gives him a teaching on craving. So you can look at those suttas if you want more details about this venerable and what kind of teachings he received. And 2 out of 4 he strives and becomes an arahant after he receives the teaching. So he does. Anyway, maybe I'm spoiling the spoiling the sutta for you. But anyway, here's the teaching. This is as you might find in the chat. It's SN3595, and you can find that on Sutta Central. And oh dear, I think I forgot. My phone is on my desk. I don't know if you want to. I was going to bring that down. It has a Sutta Central on it. I don't have. I don't know how to access it on this computer or how to get the Pali. But if you can get onto Sutta Central, you see both there's a way to look at Bhante Sujato's translation, and you get both the Pali and the English, which is really helpful. And the translation is a little bit different. But I will start reading the sutta now while the Tom Wade is finding my phone. Bring it. So then it says, then the Venerable Molankiyaputta approached the Blessed One and said to him, Venerable Sir, it would be good if the Blessed One would teach me the Dhamma in brief, so that having heard the Dhamma from the Blessed One, I might dwell alone, withdrawn, diligent, ardent, and resolute. Thank you. So this. So I think it starts pretty much the same in the Suttas and Bhante Sujato's translation. So we'll just skip down to where it starts diverging. And so now the Blessed Word answers, Hear now, Molankiyaputta, what should I say to the young bhikkhus when a bhikkhu like you, old, aged, burdened with years, advanced in life, comes to the last stage, asks me for an exhortation in brief? So he gets scolded right away. And I think it's because of you may have spent so much time wasting time asking foolish questions. I don't know. But and then the Venerable Molankiyaputta responds, Although, Venerable Sir, I am old, aged, burdened with years, advanced in life, come to the last stage, let the Blessed One teach me the Dhamma in brief. Let the Fortunate One teach me the Dhamma in brief. Perhaps I may understand the meaning of the Blessed One's statement. Perhaps I may become an heir to the Blessed One's statement. So he has a sense of urgency now, maybe after wasting a number of years in monastic life. But this happens. Well, we realize, yes, the years are short. We don't have a lot of time. And that's true with anyone, because no one knows how long they'll live. What do you think, Molankiyaputta? So he starts to answer the Venerable. The Lord Buddha answers the Venerable. What do you think, Molankiyaputta? Do you have any desire, lust, or affection for those forms cognizable by the eye that you have not seen and never saw before, that you do not see and would not think might be seen? So starting an inquiry to Molankiyaputta, and it's a slightly different translation by Bhante Sujato. He says, Do you have any desire or greed or fondness for sights known by the eye that you haven't seen, that you've never seen, you don't see, and you don't think would be seen? So this is slightly different. Pretty much the same though. And then Molankiyaputta responds, No, Venerable Sir. Do you have any desire, lust, or affection for those sounds cognizable by the ear, for those odors cognizable by the nose, for those tastes cognizable by the tongue, for those tactile objects cognizable by the body. So this is the sense basis, and there's cognition at each of those, according to the Buddhist teaching, at each sense base, there's a separate cognition. For those mental phenomena cognized by the mind that you have not cognized and never cognized before, that you do not cognize and would not think might be cognized. No, Venerable Sir. So if you hadn't had any that previous experience of seeing or hearing or tasting, would you have any desire for something that you don't know, you never thought of, you've never experienced? And so this is, you just think about that. Can you even imagine something that you've never experienced? What happens to the mind when you it's like you don't have any desire for that. So Bhante Sujato says, do you have any desire, greed, or fondness for sights known by the eye? He says known instead of cognized. That you haven't seen, you've never seen before, you don't see, and you don't think would be seen. So I think it makes a little more sense that you do not see and would not think might be seen. So it doesn't even occur to you. And then do you have any desire or greed or affection for sounds known by the ear, smells known by the nose, taste known by the tongue, touches known by the body, thoughts known by the mind that you haven't known, something you never thought about before? Do you have any desire for anything like that? No, sir. And this is, you may recognize this. Okay. Maybe I'll read Bhante Bodhi's first. This may sound familiar to you. Here, Molankiyaputta, regarding things seen, heard, sensed, and cognized by you. In the seen, there will be merely the seen. In the heard, there will be merely the heard. In the sense, there will be merely the sensed. In the cognized, there will be merely the cognized. So does that sound familiar to anybody? Do you recognize that? No? Yes?
Is that the advice of Bahia to Jagarita as well?
So this Bhante Wade is that the advice to Bahia, and it's the Bahia of the bark clock, the Dakura Chiria or something like that. Daruchiria. And this is in the Udana, and it's in the book of the eights, and it says 5/12. So anyway, you can find it in the Udana, the advice to Bahia. And so when Bahia hears this, he's instantly, he realizes awakening. He's instantly awoken by this teaching. Bahia is known as the most fastest, the quickest in comprehending the teaching. And it's a long story. We won't get into his story. That's also quite interesting. That appears in the Udana and also, I think, in the Vinaya. I think his story is in the Vinaya too. I'm not sure. But at least it's in the Udana. I have a reference for the Udana. So, when Molankiyaputta, regarding things seen, heard, sensed, and cognized by you, In the seen, there will be merely the seen. In the heard, there will be merely the heard. In the sense, there will be merely the sensed. In the cognized, there will be merely the cognized. Then, Malankiyaputta, you will not be by that. When Malankiyaputta, you are not by that, you will not be therein. When Malankiyaputta, you are not therein, then you will be neither here nor beyond nor in between the two. This itself is the end of suffering. So this is actually Bahia received that full teaching, including that last part that I just read. And Bhante Sujato has a slightly different. Says, in that case, when it comes to things that are to be seen, heard, thought, and known, in the seen will be merely the seen, and the heard will be merely the heard, and the thought that will be merely the thought, and the known will be merely the known. When this is the case, you won't be by that. When you're not by that, you won't be in that. When you're not in that, you won't be in this world or the world beyond or in between the two. Just this is the end of suffering. So when that teaching has been given to the Venerable Bahia, he's not a bhikkhu at that time. Actually, he's kind of post-mortem became a venerable one, but because he became an arahant instantly, and he died before he was able to receive full ordination. But that teaching has been pondered by quite a few people, and there's a lot of discussion on what that actually is pointing to. And that could be a big discussion. I think we could probably spend quite some time just trying to understand this teaching. In the commentaries, in the notes, it's saying that when you will not be by that. It's just it's pointing to by, influenced by lust or greed, or you will not be. It will not be within us. It won't be therein. Having to do with greed. And some people take it as an anatta, where you will not be there. You will not be in the cognized. You will not be. The you is not there. But Malankiyaputta has his own understanding of what the Lord Buddha says, and this is what's interesting about this sutta, because the Malankiyaputta interprets what the Buddha has just said. So it says, I understand in detail, Venerable Sir, the meaning of what was stated by the Blessed One in brief. Having seen and then he breaks out into verse, which is kind of lovely. Having seen a form with mindfulness muddled, attending to the pleasing sign, one experiences it with infatuated mind and remains tightly holding to it. So this is the greed, actually, that is infiltrating our experience of sight, sound, smell, touch. Many feelings flourish within. originating from the visible form, covetousness and annoyance as well, by which one's mind becomes disturbed. For one who accumulates suffering thus, nibbana is said to be far away. So this is far from just seeing something, cognizing it with the eye. This is like is gone all the way into proliferation. Having heard a sound with mindfulness muddled, having smelt an odor with mindfulness muddled, having enjoyed a taste with mindfulness muddled, having felt a contact with mindfulness muddled, having known an object with mindfulness muddled, one who accumulates suffering thus, nibbana is said to be far away. So I wanted to mention too, when it says seen, heard, and sensed, this word sensed includes both all three, the smell, taste, and touch. But it also can mean, let's see, Bhante Sujato says instead, thought. He uses the word thought. And mute, this is word, mute is known, understood, sense perception through nose, tongue, and touch. So this is like this, our experience of seeing and knowing and like cognizing, I think, because of cognition I see something and there's a cognition of a sight. I hear something, there's cognition of a sound. So there's some understanding. It's not just the vibration at the ear or the light making contact with the optic nerve or something like that. There's cognition of something. And then, so it's not just when you see something, it's not just, a baby might see something and not recognize that what it is until they've had some kind of experience with it. Like I see there's a chair over there. So the baby would crawl over and start touching it, and they would start rolling, and another kind of chair is stationary, and then the baby sees that people sit on the chair. So they understand. And then, so all this information gets pulled in about some kind of a sight, and then desire, like, oh, I've got to have that kind of chair. It looks so comfortable, and it's got the rolling a feature that it'll roll, so I can just sit in and push myself around in the chair a little bit to get just the right angle at the desk, and I gotta have it. So this is like the mindfulness is muddled because there's all this mental proliferation. Something is pleasing, seems pleasing, and then they become infatuated with it, and then the mind is holding on to the idea of the chair or whatever it is. I just happen to see a chair in the room like that. So, or I get very angry because there's a different kind of chair and it hurts my back or my sciatic nerve or something. And then why can't they replace these chairs and get me mad at the management at the monastery? Anyway, so the mind becomes disturbed. And then Bhante Sujato has an interesting translation. Okay. So when you see a sight, mindfulness is lost. This is mutta, is forgotten, is how the dictionary says. And the Bhante Bodhi is a kind of a poetic interpretation of muddled. The mindfulness is muddled. And then as attention latches on a pleasant feature, this is piya nimitam. Piya nimitam manasi karoto. So this manasi is from it knowing, or it's the mind, coming from the mind. So experience it with a mind full of desire. You keep clinging to it. Many feelings grow, arising from sights. The mind is damaged. So he says the mind is damaged rather than becomes disturbed. Covetousness and annoyance as well. So this is classic translation. Abijah would be the annoyance, but hesa is vexation, annoyance, and ignorance. Injury, excuse me. Annoyance, injury. So that's where he said the mind is damaged. Bija is longing. So it's damaged by covetousness and cruelty. Heaping up suffering like this, you're said to be far from extinguishment. So far from, that's Bhante Sujata's extinguishment is his translation of Nibbana, like a fire extinguished. And then it continues when you hear a sound, mindfulness is lost. Experiencing it with a mind full of desire, you keep clinging to it. Many feelings grow, arising from sounds. The mind is damaged by covetousness and cruelty. Heaping up suffering like this, you're said to be far from extinguishment. And through this, all the other senses. And then, then there's a mental proliferation, clinging to or being averse or clinging. But then there's hope. When firmly mindful, one sees a form. One is not inflamed by lust for forms. One experiences it with dispassionate mind and does not remain holding it tightly. So I might even cognize something as see something, and then it may seem pleasant or unpleasant, but with the mindfulness, the lust or the clinging or aversion will not follow that. One fares mindfully in such a way that even as one sees the form and while one undergoes a feeling, suffering is exhausted, not built up. For one dismantling suffering thus, Nibbana is said to be close by. So that's actually quite beautiful. It's dismantling dukkha. So we're still experiencing things as pleasant and unpleasant, but we're experiencing the feeling without having all the aversion or attraction and mental proliferation. Oops. Right. So Bhante Sujata's translation is a little different. When you see a sight with mindfulness, there's no desire for sights. Experiencing it with a mind free of desire, you don't keep clinging to it. Even as you see a sight and get familiar with how it feels, you wear away, you don't heap up. That's how to live mindfully. Eroding suffering like this, you're said to be in the presence of extinguishment. Sasantike is near or in the vicinity or presence of something. So nibbana is either not far away or you're in the presence of it. And then it continues with the sounds, smells, tastes, touch, and thoughts. So even as you savor a taste and get familiar with how it feels, you wear away, you don't heap up. That's how to live mindfully. I don't know if I would, getting familiar with it. While one undergoes a feeling, it's just really experiencing its weighty, I think is what they're looking at. Feels, senses, knows. See, we're at Chito, detached. Okay, not attached. So, when firmly mindful, one knows an object. So this is a cognition, this a knowing, recognizing. One is not inflamed for lust for objects, or knowing the object in the mind too, the memory, the thought of something. One is not inflamed by lust for objects, for one diminishing suffering. Thus, Nibbana is said to be close by. Oh, it's diminishing. I guess I misread that the first time. Diminishing suffering. I like dismantling too. That's my mistake. Okay, so in such a way, Venerable Sir, it is in such a way, Venerable Sir, that I understand in detail the meaning of what was stated by the Blessed One in brief. And then Lord Buddha says, good, Malunkiya Putta. It is good that you understand in detail the meaning of what was stated by me in brief. And then it is in such a way, Malunkiya Putta, that the meaning of what was stated by me in brief should be understood in detail. Then the Venerable Malunkiya Putta, having delighted and rejoiced in the Blessed One's words, rose from his seat, and after paying homage to the Blessed One, keeping him on the right, departed. Then dwelling alone, withdrawn, diligent, ardent, and resolute, the Venerable Malunkiya Putta, by realizing it for himself with direct knowledge, in this very life entered and dwelled in that unsurpassed goal of the holy life, for the sake of which clansmen rightly go forth from the household life to homelessness. He directly knew birth, destroyed his birth. Holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There's no more for this state of being. And the Venerable Malunkiya Putta became one of the Arhants. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So, I see a lot of greetings from people who came in. Sadhus. Someone is from Nepal. I won't read everyone. See, I don't see any questions so far. Are there any questions from those present here, or any comments? Any things that you would like to add to what I've said, or disagreements, or corrections?
I also like dismantling.
You like dismantling? That was a Freudian slip, but diminishing, dismantling. Yeah. We could dismantle dukkha. Did you have a question? You were just looking at me in a particular way. I thought maybe you had a question.
I often look at you raptly. That's a word. I do have a question. Is this about sense restraint and minimizing the exposure to those things so that you don't develop?
Well, if you look at the sutta, he's actually saying when actually experiencing a taste or experiencing sights, experiencing something at the sense gates. So she's asking if it's about sense restraint. I don't know if you could hear it. And then trying to avoid, you're saying like avoiding this? Yeah, I think this is about, when the seen is only the seen, when the heard is only the heard, when the sensed is only the sensed. That means you do have the experience at those sense doors, but there's no, and then even experiencing it as pleasant or unpleasant, then according to the explication that the Venerable Avalokiteshvara had given, and the Lord Buddha said, yes, that's true, that's right, good understanding. So even experiencing the Vedana, is it pleasant or unpleasant, then lust doesn't arise, or aversion doesn't arise, desire, clinging, all that proliferation. So this is a mind training. I think there is restraint in that you either kind of are protecting the mind by not allowing it to arise, but a lot of times you have to see the arising or the flickering, maybe a little bit of a flickering, like see something desirable, and like maybe the work of art in the room or something. I'm trying to think of see something, but then there's this, you can feel a little bit of a pull, or there's like this, with the Vedana arising, is it a lot of it's at the mind door, because then I'm cognizing it as something and cognizing that it would be pleasurable. Like I'm saying the chair again as an example. Like I'll look at the chair and I never sat in the chair, and I think, oh, that looks like a great chair. That looks so comfortable. So I've never sat in the chair, so I don't know actually the feeling of the chair, but the desire is rising anyway, because it's the idea of it. So this is where the proliferation comes. Otherwise, I just see chair, and I recognize that's a chair. And then if I needed a chair, and then it was okay for me to sit in it, then I would. But it's not like I have to have that chair, or that's the chair that I have to be sitting in, not that chair. It's just like, so the restraint would be not allowing that, especially the mental proliferation. You might just think, oh, that looks like a nice chair. It's a pleasant color, something like that. But I wouldn't, the restraint would come at allowing desire or aversion to take over the mind. And there's degrees of it. There's you kind of see it coming. I even like, I have a memory of something, and then this is the thoughts, and then, or an idea about something, like things are supposed to be done a different way. And then it's just like, it's really wrong how it's being done. And this is like a really bad thing that's happening. And then those people that are doing that's just really wrong. And it's like, and then some of it's so unnecessary. It's like none of my business, really. You know, what they're doing is none of my business, not my problem. I love this is Ajahn Brahms. He says, none of my business, not my problem. And a lot of the times that's true. And then the option two is, do I need to get angry about that? But sometimes I see my mind heading in that direction, and I think, this is none of my business, and I don't need to get angry about that. Because there's this like, it's almost like you're, I don't know if other people have experienced that, but there is a point where you can just say, no, it's not necessary. I have to get angry. This is silly. And then, what happens is if you keep working with that, then you get to a point where it doesn't even occur to you to get angry about something like that. Like what? But I think either you've gotten some really deep insight and then it's really cut through that, or you've been working on it. So at least the sense restraint would be keeping you from going over that threshold where you could jump into getting really angry and obsessing about something. And a lot of it's just silly. It's like beyond our control. What does it matter? Or what does it matter if it's one way or another way? It's just my idea of how things are supposed to be. My way is right. And if it's not in agreement with how I think things should be, then it's bad, it's wrong. So I'm even laughing at that because it sounds kind of absurd when you think about it, but we get lost in those things. We're just so convinced that we know better than others. Let's see. See if there's it says here, looks like question. Oops. It says, if we let go of the unpleasant and unpleasant, do we allow the flow of our mind just to be? Well, there's a discussion with Vedana, whether it's automatic that Vedana will arise at sense contact. And some people say, yes, there's always Vedana. But I think with my experience when I've been working with Vedana, the neither pleasant nor unpleasant Vedana is what's arising more, because there's less of that judgment that comes up. I mean, like if I step on something sharp with my bare feet and I cut myself, that's going to be unpleasant. But then there's I can get upset and angry and just make it worse than it actually is. Or I feel that there's something sharp. I got a thorn or something in my foot. And then so I need to take care of it. So that's a signal to me that there's something wrong. The flow of the mind just to be. Yeah, I think the thing is with the Lord Buddha's teaching, it's not that we get kind of spaced out and disconnected, but we see things intelligently. And then we're not pulled one way or another all the time with our desire to experience the pleasant and to avoid the unpleasant. So, and then if the mind is more peaceful because of that, we actually maybe be feeling happy. So that's a pleasant feeling of just or being content. And that's pleasant, to be content. So flow of the mind, just to be. I think the mind is just being aware. And then that would encompass whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And like I said, the neutral may be more predominant, or you may be noticing the neutral more. I hope that answers your question, because I'm not sure what you mean by the flow of the mind, because just the awareness of what is in contact with the mind. I don't know. So I hope that answers your question. And then, yeah, pleasant and unpleasant will be continuously arising and passing. And that may be another aspect of the flow, is that we're constantly in contact at all the sense doors. And so there'll be constant arising and passing of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral contacts. So we're not grasping onto any of it. So maybe that's what you're getting at. Let's see if there's any more. Any more questions from? Yes?
So, when seeing pleasant or unpleasant Vedana arising, how can one be gentle with recognizing the clinging and working on investigating where the clinging is coming from?
What was the last sentence? Unless what?
And recognize where the clinging is coming from.
Oh, recognize where the clinging is coming from.
Like, how can one be gentle with the recognizing?
Well, there's a understanding that being gentle with yourself is important. And then I think gentle with the critical mind as well. It's kind of a tricky thing, because if you see that your mind is, like you're hoping not to be clinging, hoping not to have aversion, and you still see, I know it's silly to be getting angry about this, and I see myself getting, sometimes it's not, I'm not saying I'm completely devoid of anger or aversion when I said that, sometimes I do catch myself, but sometimes I see that the anger has arisen, especially old things, like things from the past, and there's a memory, and the emotion is kind of intertwined. It's bound up with the memory. So somebody said something, did something long ago, 30 years ago for me, 40 years ago for me, because I'm so old. So my experience and memory of something that somebody said or did or situation comes up, and I'm furious, and it's just kind of like, wow. But it could be some memory of something that happened, short period of time, and there was a strong emotional response to it, or something reminds you, it's so close to that experience that it gets confused, or like someone kind of reminds you of your brother or somebody in your life, and they are treating you in a similar way, and that emotion of when you were children together and they were behaving in this way comes up, and then you're furious and it's like being a kid again. But then there's the recognition, oh, I think you if you feel the kind of, a lot of times it's this burst of emotion, you try to catch it when you feel this burst of emotion, and you think, wait a minute, or whoa, just a second. And you try to, then you're putting the brakes on a little bit. And you might say to that person, I'm feeling a really strong emotion right now. Can you excuse me? And so, because if the person continues the way they're talking to you or whatever it is that's going on, you might just blow up. It might just be out of control because that emotion is so strong. But once you start experiencing that more and getting a handle on it more, then it'll dissipate it. And you might even remember, oh, this person is talking to me just the way my brother used to talk to me. And then this is not my brother. This is another person. We're both adults. Whatever, I have another way of responding to this situation. I love my brother. It has nothing to do with my brother. I'm just trying to use an example. So anyway, so friend, brother, parent, whatever it is, somebody in your life that did something that was harmful or whatever, and the memory is so strongly attached to the emotion, then you kind of have to unravel those things, and it takes time. So you have to be gentle with yourself, and then there's strong habit patterns. We have a strong habit of responding with anger or responding with desire or whatever. You might notice what your predominant kilesa, your predominant unwholesome underlying tendency, the anusayas. We have a predominant anusayas. So if we identify that, then I can see I have a tendency towards aversion, and so then I'm more of aware of that tendency. But I can't neglect the fact that I do still have desire too. But my response is more towards aversion, right? So I notice that. So then I make an effort to work with it, either with using loving kindness meditation, which I did for many years because I just saw how aversive I was. And then just being patient. It takes time. So if you're a greed type, there's a subak practice to see the unpleasantness in everything, or the impermanence of it, or how it's innately unsatisfactory. It's like, it's not going to, whatever it is I try to gratify myself with, it's not going to last. It's not going to live up to my, how we we went to finally we went to saw the lake or the reservoir. And I had this idea in my mind about seeing the reservoir. And part of the back of my mind, I knew it wasn't going to be this glorious thing that was just going to be, wow, this is spectacular or something. And we finally make it to the reservoir, and it's just like, oh, it's just it's a city park. And but if I think that I must somehow satisfy myself by having these experiences, like people spend thousands of dollars to go to the other parts of the world to see something, some tourist attraction that they think is that this is how they're going to be happy by having these experiences. I was joking about my bucket list. It's like, now I get to check that off my bucket list. But it's kind of like, so what? So if you're a lust type, you could say, okay, it's not going to really satisfy me. It's only just a moment, even if it's momentarily gratifying. It's transitory. So being gentle with yourself by just recognizing that it's a habit pattern, and then some things, because of uh, how they're bound up with memory. The emotion is bound up with it. It takes a while to unravel. I have another question here. It says, Valerie says, yes, I understand. I didn't word it right. It's more allowing the stream of your mind as something arises, pleasant or unpleasant. So that's there's, you'll see the arising of pleasant and unpleasant and neutral. It's good to also notice the neutral, and then that's very transient. And then Rohit is asking, I'll show this one. We've got a few minutes here. It's something I think maybe it's sometimes. I think I am not going to be angry, but when things go bad, it happens. Yeah, so anger just can be really instantaneous, and but we can experience that kind of initial blast of anger, or irritation is sometimes goes unnoticed. So it's really important to notice irritation, because we might be walking around feeling irritated all morning and somebody says something and it's not even that bad. Or I spill something happens, like you're saying. When things go bad, anger happens. Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it, that anger happens. And it's not really, we're not intending to be angry. Although I could see myself, like I was saying, I could see myself heading in a direction when it's more of a mental thing and the complaining starts happening, and then I can decide to really up the volume or something and get angry. But that kind of like spontaneous anger because suddenly things are not going the way we like them, or some mishap happens. Yeah, that's harder to control, but we can guard ourselves to not perpetuate it. We can see the arising. One thing that occurred to me is that anger is unpleasant Vedana at the mind door, and I was feeling cold or feeling in pain and starting to get irritable and angry because circumstances were such that I would be experiencing this. And then the blame could start brewing and all this kind of stuff, nonsense. But I started realizing, anger is unpleasant Vedana at the mind door. And so I just started saying, when I was seeing myself getting irritated or start seeing anger starting to brew, I just say, unpleasant Vedana at the mind door. So one next time that anger arises spontaneously, if you could remember quickly enough and say, unpleasant Vedana at the mind door. And you could still be feeling angry. Unpleasant Vedana at the body door also. There's a tension in the body. It's uncomfortable. So yeah, anger happens and we can forgive ourselves, but we don't have to get into blaming or taking it out on everyone else around us when the anger comes out. Well, if it comes up, don't let it come out. Maybe that's the way. Try not to. And if it does come out, then we go to our friends. Oh, please forgive me. I was in a bad mood and I just I wasn't able to contain it, and I really should have. So please forgive me. So I think we're almost at the end of time. And there's some question about, I don't think that this is maybe one of those questions that can't be answered. It says, Venerable Bhikkhuni, are there differences, I guess, between nirvana and this wood? I don't understand what this is. It's some other. I don't know if it's Pali or Sanskrit.
Yeah, that might be Hindu. Yeah, that looks like a Distri. It looks like it's definitely Sanskrit. I have no idea what that is either.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Nibbana is something that really can't be talked about in intellectual terms. And I don't know, there are descriptions of Nibbana, but I don't know what that is. So I can't answer your question. I'm sorry. And that it's something that each individual has to experience for themselves and know for themselves. But it's the absence of greed, hate, and delusion completely destroyed. So I think that would be it for now. We're up to 9 a.m. So thank you all for your kind attention. I hope this was helpful.
We'd like to request this opportunity to sadhu your talk. Right? Hantamayam Tamakataya Sadhu Karang Dhamasi Sadhu 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 Anumodami.
And sadhu to you, all of you too.
Thank you.
And if you had a question that didn't get answered, you might be able to ask it another time.
Would you like to announce
There's a monk chat is on Friday evening it's at
7:30?
7:30.
Right.
And then tomorrow will be another sutta reading.
It's a Friday morning at 8, right?
Friday morning at 8.
8
Yes.
a.m. Yeah.
So,
That's with you, Ayya, is that right?
and I'll be here tomorrow.
With Ayya.
Yeah, there's a lot about anger, and it's a really important thing to look at. But we can maybe talk about it another time since we're at the end of our time. All right. Thank you all. Take care.
Okay.